It began in the silence after the blast, the kind that swallows sound, thought, even faith. The ridge was gone. The radio was dead. Bodies lay where orders had failed to reach them. He remembered the cold first, not pain, not fear, just the metallic taste of snow and smoke in his throat. Minutes blurred into survival-gauging wind, counting rounds, crawling toward a horizon that no longer existed. There was no victory, only continuation, breath by breath, movement without promise. Later, they'd call it the break point. But out there, it wasn't about missions or medals. It was about holding the line when the line itself disappeared. If you've ever stood in that kind of silence, subscribe. Tell us where you were watching from. Because this wasn't about surviving the mission, it was about surviving yourself. The cold comes first, before sound, before movement. It hangs across the mountains like a held breath, the kind of silence that feels aware. In the distance, rotor blades begin to stir it awake, chopping through dawn with a steady mechanical rhythm. The landing zone glows faintly under a pale sky, frost clinging to the edges of sandbags and aluminum cases. Each breath from the gathered Marines curls into the air, vanishing as quickly as it forms. At 0500 hours, the base hums with restrained precision. Boots scuff across gravel, webbing tightens, muted radio checks pass between units. The world operates on rhythm, but beneath it, beneath the weight of routine, there's something unspoken, a quiet expectation. Staff Sergeant Riley Keene stands apart from the cluster, her rifle slung with practiced balance. The frost on her sleeve catches the light from the aircraft's open bay, glinting like small fragments of glass. She's watching the ridgelines, not the men, not the checklist, just the dark line where night lingers against the snow. Her expression is steady, but her body is tuned like wire. She breathes through her nose, slow and controlled, every exhale visible in the freezing air. The mission brief had come hours before overwatch escort for a ground convoy moving toward the northern valley. Routine, they said. Intelligence sweep, low resistance, full daylight, nothing special. But Keene had learned long ago that routine in this country rarely meant safe. She'd seen enough mornings that began this quietly end in the chaos of dust and shouting. Captain Logan Brooks walks past her, clipboard tucked under one arm, a deliberate confidence in every step. He doesn't look her way. His tone earlier had been firm, almost dismissive. She remembered it clearly even without words. A subtle disregard, not open contempt, but the kind of skepticism that lingers around people who've earned their respect differently. Keene had outlasted captains before. She didn't take it personally anymore. Sergeant Mason Vance lingers nearby, adjusting his pack. His glance catches hers, a wordless exchange of familiarity. They've shared deployments, shared silence. He trusts her eye on the scope more than any briefing map. That trust is enough. The wind picks up slightly, carrying the metallic scent of aviation fuel. It moves through the camp like a quiet messenger. One of the door gunners tests the minigun mount. The metallic whirring slices through the stillness, then fades. Brooks raises his voice over the rotors, his outline framed against the growing light. His gestures are sharp, methodical, efficient. Orders ripple outward. Keene's name doesn't cross his lips, but her position is already set overwatch from the secondary ridge, 1,000 yards east of the convoy route. She checks her compass, the old brass casing dulled by years of handling. It had belonged to her grandfather, a Marine from a different war, a different kind of silence. The needle trembles slightly before settling north. She doesn't need it for navigation. It's a reminder of steadiness, of lineage, of the weight she carries without needing to announce it. The helicopters lift off one by one, their downdraft flattening frost and kicking grit into the air. The sound builds until thought itself becomes vibration. Keene steps aboard, crouching low beneath the rotors. Her hand rests on the doorframe, fingers brushing against the cold metal as if grounding herself before the sky swallows them. As the base shrinks below, the valley opens, A vast corridor of muted colors, brown and white and gray, layered in shadow. The convoy routes cut through like veins across a frozen body. From above, it looks peaceful, deceptively so. Her scope is sealed, her weapons stowed, but her mind is already mapping the terrain. Lines of sight, potential choke points, dead ground. She notes the stillness of a particular ridgeline on the eastern horizon. No wind disturbance, no movement. It's nothing. Maybe, but it stays in her thoughts. Brooks leans forward in the cockpit, gesturing to his map. Confident, Vance runs one last radio check, his voice steady but subdued. The crew chief gives a thumbs up. Keene says nothing. She watches. Always watching. The aircraft banks right, sun glinting off its side as it descends toward insertion. From the ridge, the shadows shift again. That same stillness lingers, unnatural in its precision, as though the earth itself is waiting for something. They land hard, the gear biting into frozen dirt. The wind dies abruptly, replaced by the muffled sound of boots meeting ground. Keene steps out, the air colder here, sharper. Her breath fogs again. She kneels briefly, adjusting her rifle, eyes scanning the perimeter. The terrain answers her silence with its own. Somewhere behind her, Brooks gives an order. Somewhere ahead, the valley waits. She glances once more at the compass. The needle holds steady. Then she stands, lifts her pack, and begins moving toward Overwatch. The mountains seem to hold their breath. The mission has begun. The morning unfolds with a brittle calm. Pale light filters across the valley, brushing over the convoy in muted gold. Frost clings to the edges of tarps and the metal of the vehicles, melting in slow rivulets. Every breath released turns white, hanging suspended before vanishing. The air is thin and clean, the kind of air that amplifies sound. Even a boot against rock feels intrusive. Staff Sergeant Riley Keene lies prone on the ridge, the stock of her rifle pressed steady against her shoulder. Through her scope, the convoy below stretches across the valley floor, armored vehicles spaced at disciplined intervals, engines idling low. The team moves by procedure. Radios hum with clipped brevity. It's the sound of order, of routine. Her eyes track movement along the lead vehicle, then sweep left to the ridgeline opposite. Wind speed minimal. Visibility excellent. No heat signatures beyond what should be there. Still, something feels wrong. Not visible, not measurable, but present. The terrain is too still. The snow undisturbed where it should bear traces of runoff. Keene keys her mic once, voice measured and low. A warning, barely a suggestion. Caution, possible shift in terrain pattern. She knows the language to use, the tone that doesn't sound like doubt but still signals unease. The reply comes seconds later, firm and efficient, wrapped in authority. Copy received. Proceed as planned. Below, Captain Logan Brooks moves between vehicles, his posture confident, commanding, the kind of composure that can seem like strength until it meets the wrong kind of silence. He scans his map, gestures toward the west route, and the line begins to advance. Keene adjusts her sightline. The world narrows into her field of view, crosshairs steady, heartbeat slow. The scope reveals small truths, the shimmer of heat around an exhaust, the rhythm of boots on frozen dirt. She exhales once, long, letting the air leave her in a single controlled stream. The land gives nothing back. The first anomaly comes small, a flicker at the edge of vision, a reflection where none should exist, too deliberate to be rock, too high for glass. Her breath stills. She marks it mentally, rechecks the wind, calculates range. Her mic clicks twice, the briefest code for standby. No acknowledgement. She watches the third vehicle roll forward, tires crushing frost. A gull of dust lifts in the still air. And then, absence. A gap in the pattern of sound. The silence is sudden, heavy, aware. In that single heartbeat, she knows. The explosion tears upward, swallowing air, light, and time itself. The valley erupts in flame and debris. Shockwave slams through her position, rattling her scope, kicking dust into her face. Sound arrives late, a concussive thunder that shakes the ridgeline. The lead vehicle lifts, then folds, metal twisting into itself before collapsing in smoke. Keene's training takes over before thought returns. Her breath sharpens, focus narrows. She shifts right, sight clearing the haze. Shapes move, figures scattering, some diving for cover, others frozen in shock. Static bleeds through her earpiece, overlapping voices, fragments of command, confusion rendered in short gasps. She finds the ridge opposite. Movement, muzzle flash, faint and fast. She tracks it instinctively, centering on the origin. Her trigger breaks the stillness. One shot, correction. Second shot, silence. Another burst from the left flank. She adjusts, breath measured, pulse even, each movement practiced, every shot an act of clarity within chaos. She feels the familiar calm settle, not absence of fear, but mastery of it. Below, Brooks shouts orders into the radio, voice breaking the static. Vehicles reposition. Vance drags one of the wounded behind cover, movements urgent but controlled. The scene becomes choreography, panic and precision coexisting. Keene continues to scan, marking targets, eliminating them as efficiently as she identifies them. Dust clouds rise, drift, and settle again. The world becomes a sequence of images. Muzzle flash, impact, silence. Minutes stretch. The intensity burns, then dims. Smoke rolls across the valley, thick and acrid. The roar of combat fades, leaving only wind and static. Keene lowers her rifle slightly, eyes never leaving the scope's edge. Her ears ring, but she feels each heartbeat clearly, steady as the ticking of a metronome. She breathes in the aftermath, the scent of cordite, burnt fuel, and cold iron. Her gloves are dusted in frost and carbon. The radio crackles faintly fragmented acknowledgments, casualty counts, location confirmations. It's all procedure again, but quieter now, softer. Through her scope, the convoy is smaller, fewer figures moving, more shapes still. The ground burns in places, blackened snow steaming in uneven patches. She watches Brooks kneel beside a fallen Marine, his head bowed, one hand resting on the man's shoulder. Leadership stripped of its armor. Keene doesn't move. Her face is expressionless, but her eyes hold a weight that the camera would linger on. There's no triumph in her precision, no satisfaction in control, only gravity. The knowledge that she held lives in her scope, that her steadiness decided who saw another dawn. Vance's voice filters faintly through comms. Confirmation of perimeter clear. Her hand releases the trigger guard, muscles trembling only after the danger passes. She looks to her right, the brass casing glinting against snow like a marker. The silence returns, thicker this time. It carries the aftertaste of shock, the kind that seeps deep into bone. She feels the cold settle into her skin, heavier now that adrenaline fades. Keene lowers her head slightly, eyes tracing the horizon. The ridge that had been so still before is marred with smoke trails now. The illusion of peace is gone, replaced by the truth of the terrain, indifferent, eternal. Her compass lies beside her glove, the needle vibrating faintly from the concussion. When it steadies, she lifts it, thumb brushing the engraved initials on the back. The metal is warm from her hand, incongruous in the chill. She looks down at the valley, her breath forming one final cloud before fading. Below, the survivors regroup, figures moving slower now, each motion carrying the weight of recognition. The chain of command still holds, but something inside it has shifted. The tone in Brooks' voice is different. The precision in Vance's movements more deliberate. Trust, recalibrated through fire. The camera would linger wide now, the valley smoldering under a hard winter sky. smoke curling like ghostly threads. The snow absorbs the noise until only wind remains. Staff Sergeant Riley Keene exhales, steady and low. Her rifle rests across her lap, the scope clouded with dust. The mountain holds still once more, as if watching in silence. The battle has ended, but the echo lingers, unseen, waiting. The valley burns beneath a sky the color of steel. Smoke coils upward, merging with low clouds until horizon and destruction become one. Echoes of gunfire roll between the ridgelines, not in rhythm anymore, but in fits, like the dying breaths of a storm refusing to end. Staff Sergeant Riley Keene presses deeper into the ridgeline gravel, her cheek against the rifle stock, eyes behind the scope that has become her only world. The glass is scratched and dusted, the reticle steady despite the tremor in the ground. Each shot fired from below sends a faint vibration through the rocks. The convoy, now a scattered mosaic of smoke and movement, has fractured under the sustained attack. Radio chatter crackles through static. Brooks' voice cuts in, sharp, clipped, commanding through uncertainty. Orders barked, coordinates relayed, all wrapped in the illusion of control. But even through the distortion, Keene hears what the voice is really carrying, the edge of disbelief. The ambush wasn't random. It was built, planned into the terrain, executed with precision. Whoever they were fighting had studied this valley, knew where the blind spots lay, where the ridgelines funneled movement. The enemy had built a web, and the platoon had walked straight into its center. Keene adjusts her magnification, sweeping the opposite ridge. Heat signatures bloom and vanish like ghosts. She marks 4, no, 5 positions. Coordinated fire teams, moving in a triangle formation. Smart, controlled, waiting for the Marines to commit before tightening the trap. Brooks' next order comes over comms, command to push west, rejoin the secondary vehicle and counterattack uphill. The sound of his voice is steady, but Keene's gut turns. The west slope is open, narrow, a funnel for artillery. She's seen the scorch marks there already. One hit from indirect fire and the entire column will be gone. She keys her mic, her tone calm but deliberate. Suggest alternate route. East flank offers partial cover behind elevation, potential for overwatch advantage. Her report is methodical, stripped of emotion, but beneath every word is quiet urgency. The reply comes seconds later. Negative. Maintain westward advance. Tosi confirms. Keene exhales, the air fogging her scope. Below, she can see movement. Marines breaking cover, pushing toward the exposed slope as ordered. She knows what will come before it happens. She can almost hear it, the delayed hum of distant tubes, the breath between release and impact. She flips her safety off and raises her head, scanning the sky. Then it begins. The first shell hits the far end of the convoy, erupting into flame and shrapnel. The second lands closer, tearing through a Humvee like paper. The sound is deep, rolling, ancient. Brooks' voice erupts through comms again, trying to correct, trying to salvage control. But the net is chaos now. Fractured calls, half-finished responses, panic masked by procedure. Keene's hands move on instinct. She scans the high ridge, finds the source, a spotter with a radio, half concealed behind shale. One breath, one shot. The body folds forward, comms line severed. East flank, she murmurs under her breath, as if speaking to the valley itself. Her hand goes to the compass on her chest, the brass warm against her glove. The needle steadies, pointing true, unshaken by the blasts. Decision crystallizes in that stillness. She keys her mic again, voice lower now, iron beneath calm. Redirect to east. She doesn't wait for approval. Through her scope, she sees Vance glance up, recognition immediate. He taps Brooks's shoulder, gestures toward the ridge. Brooks hesitates, torn between the rulebook in his hand and the reality bleeding in front of him. The next explosion decides for him. It lands close enough to knock him to the ground, the concussion rattling the air. When he rises, Keene is already moving. She slings her rifle, descends from the ridge in quick, practiced bursts. The world becomes fragments whined in her face, rock under her boots, smoke curling through sunlight. Around her, Marines shift course, instincts aligning faster than orders. Vance signals her approach, his face streaked with dust. Keene drops beside the column, immediately taking sightlines east. The terrain opens to a narrow trench carved by winter runoff. Imperfect cover, but better than open slope. She signals direction, concise hand movements cutting through confusion. One by one, the Marines pivot, forming a staggered withdrawal. The enemy adjusts fire, but their angles are wrong now. Shells fall wide, detonations muffled against rock. Keene climbs halfway up the trench wall, scope up again, eyes tracing muzzle flashes across the far ridge. Each time she fires, she exhales. The rifle becomes an extension of thought, calm against chaos. Brooks regains his footing near the rear, eyes tracking her movements. There's no longer resistance in his gaze, only the dawning recognition of what's happening. His plan collapsing, hers holding. He doesn't speak, but his posture shifts. The orders stop. Observation replaces command. Minutes bleed into a rhythm. Fire, move, cover. The valley that had once trapped them now becomes shelter, its shape turned against the enemy. Keene calls adjustments through brief radio bursts, her voice anchoring what remains of the platoon. By the time the last shell lands, the noise has begun to thin. Gunfire breaks into isolated bursts. The smoke lifts in slow ribbons, revealing what's left. Craters smoking like open wounds, blackened vehicles, shattered glass. The smell of fuel and burned powder hangs heavy. Keene stays on overwatch until the final shot fades. Only then does she lower her rifle, the metal warm from use. The wind shifts again, colder now, moving the smoke aside like a curtain. Below her, Marines regroup in silence. Some tend to the wounded, others just sit, breathing hard, staring at nothing. The radio hums faintly, headquarters demanding reports, casualty counts, coordinates. No one answers immediately. Brooks walks toward her, slow, deliberate. His uniform is coated in dust, one sleeve torn. When he reaches the base of her position, he stops. There's no salute, no reprimand, just a nod. Small, almost imperceptible, but weighted. She returns it with the same stillness. Neither of them needs to speak. The truth is written across the valley. Her disobedience saved them. His authority survived because she had the courage to break it. The wind catches again, pulling smoke down the slope. Keene looks east, toward the rising ridge, the one that had seemed so still before all this began. Now it stands shrouded in haze, faintly glowing where sunlight filters through dust. She feels the ache in her shoulders, the tremor starting in her hands. The adrenaline that had carried her through begins to fade, replaced by something heavier. Not regret. Not exactly. More like the knowledge that clarity always costs something. Vance joins them, face pale, eyes scanning the field. He gives a brief nod toward the survivors. Fewer now, but standing. Keene meets his gaze, the shared understanding passing between them like current. Overhead, the faint thump of distant rotors grows louder, evac inbound. The sound cuts through the quiet, both relief and reminder. The mission, the moment, will be marked as successful in some report. But what it meant, that will stay buried here, beneath the dirt and the smoke. Keene lowers her rifle to the ground, unsnaps the compass from her vest. The glass is cracked now, the needle still trembling. She turns it once in her hand until the light catches on the brass. North, still true. She breathes once, slow and steady, eyes lingering on the horizon where the mountains meet the haze. The battle is over. The reckoning waits. The world holds its breath. In the valley below, smoke drifts in ribbons across scorched snow. The sound of battle has collapsed into fragments, a single burst of gunfire here, the crackle of a radio there. Then only wind. The air tastes of metal and burnt powder. Frost mingles with soot. Somewhere a radio clicks, unanswered. the static low and persistent like a heartbeat gone faint. Staff Sergeant Riley Keene lies still against the frozen ground, cheek pressed to the stock of her rifle. Her hearing hums with the residue of explosions, a thin, constant ringing that makes every other sound feel distant. Through her scope, the world is reduced to clarity and haze. Broken vehicles scattered like discarded toys, heat still rippling from the wreckage. Marines crouched behind what little cover remains. She blinks once, breath steady. The scope's reticle centers on a sliver of ridgeline 300 yards away. The shimmer of movement there, too precise to be chance, tells her what the chaos below hasn't yet confirmed. They're being encircled. The ambush was never about shock. It was design, controlled, deliberate, patient. Her finger hovers near the trigger but doesn't tighten. She's not hunting yet. She's assessing, mapping angles and probabilities. The enemy's fire has slowed. Recalibration, not retreat. They're repositioning for the kill zone. Below, Captain Logan Brooks crouches beside a half-destroyed Humvee, shouting orders into the radio. His voice breaks through static, measured and forceful, the voice of command trying to sound certain. He gestures toward the western pass, the one that cuts clean through the valley's flank. To him, it's the logical move, high ground, textbook reposition. To Keene, it's suicide. The pass is narrow, exposed, framed by elevations that still hide unseen rifles. The scorch marks along its edges confirm what her instincts already know, pre-sighted artillery lines. She keys her mic, the sound crisp and restrained. Recommend east flank movement, elevation concealment, partial defilade. The radio responds seconds later, Brooks's voice compressed and hard. Negative. Maintain west route. TOC confirms. Keene exhales slowly, eyes never leaving her scope. Her pulse steadies into the same rhythm it always does before decisive action. Not fear, not defiance, but something quieter. Awareness. The math is simple. Stay west. They die. Move east. They might live. She shifts slightly, tracking the ridgeline again. Movement confirmed. 4 enemy positions, one with a heavy machine gun already setting up. They're waiting for the next push. The moment protocol sends the platoon straight into their sights. Her gloved thumb brushes against the compass clipped to her vest. The brass is warm, its surface scratched from years of handling. The needle trembles and steadies. Always true, even when people aren't. Down below, Brooks raises his arm, signaling for the western advance. The platoon stirs. Hesitation in their movements. Instinct whispering louder than orders. Keene watches Vance glance upward, just once, toward her ridge. A question unspoken. The first mortar shell lands short of the convoy, close enough to shake the ground, far enough to warn what's coming. Snow erupts in a plume of dirt and fire. Then another lands, closer. The valley groans. Keene keys her mic again, voice firmer now. Redirect east. Repeat, east. She doesn't wait for permission. Her next shot breaks the stillness. One clean crack across the valley. The heavy gunner on the ridge drops backward, before his partner can react. Her second round finds him, too. The echo folds into the mountains. Below, confusion ripples through the platoon, but then movement starts. Vance signals, gesturing east. Instinct follows precision. They shift, cutting through smoke, stumbling toward the trench Keene had marked earlier as fallback. Brooks yells something through the radio, but it's drowned beneath another explosion. Keene keeps firing, methodical, every shot purposeful. Each squeeze of the trigger buys seconds, opens distance, redirects momentum. She becomes rhythm itself. Inhale, exhale, trigger, adjust. Her scope fogs from breath, clears, fogs again. Artillery shells rain across the western route. The path Brooks had chosen disappears in flame and debris, a curtain of orange and black consuming the slope. The shockwave slams into Keene's ridge, knocking loose shards of rock that clatter around her. Her heartbeat barely shifts. She realigns. A new target appears, a spotter crouched beside a radio dish, calling corrections. She tracks him through drifting smoke, one controlled breath. The rifle bucks lightly against her shoulder. Silence follows. The air grows thicker with smoke, acrid and bitter. Keene's lungs burn as she lowers her head to cough once. Brief, then resets. The radio crackles again, fragments of command and panic interwoven. Casualties. Regroup. Where's Overwatch? She keeps her transmissions to one line each, clipped and calm. Sector 3 clear. Move. East route stable. Continue withdrawal. The remaining vehicles lurch forward, tires skidding through blackened snow. Marines move alongside them, weapons up, faces streaked with grime and disbelief. Vance reaches the trench first, dragging one of the wounded with him. Brooks follows last, limping but upright. When his boots hit cover, he finally looks up toward Keene's position. Through her scope, she sees his face. Pale, streaked, eyes hollow with realization. He doesn't need to speak. His expression says, what orders never could she was right. Keene shifts again, scanning for trailing hostiles. Nothing immediate. The valley quiets, the echoes of artillery fading into wind. Her rifle's barrel smokes faintly. The snow around her is pitted with spent casings. She stays in overwatch as the platoon regroups below. Movement slows. Tension unspools in shallow breaths. Brooks kneels beside a Marine whose arm is bandaged in torn fabric, pressing a hand to his shoulder. He looks smaller now, not diminished, but human. Keene lowers her weapon and sits back, stretching her hands once before unclipping her compass. The crack in its glass catches the pale light. North still points true. She traces it with her thumb, the metal cold against her skin. Wind sweeps through the valley, pulling smoke into long gray ribbons. The silence that follows is not peace, it's exhaustion, the fragile quiet between what was almost lost and what remains. Brooks stands, scanning the survivors. His radio hangs loose at his side now. When he looks toward Keene's ridge again, it's not as an officer to a subordinate, but as one Marine to another. A quiet exchange of respect. No words needed. Vance catches her eye from below, gives a small nod, acknowledgement, not celebration. They all know the cost. The line between survival and obedience is thin, and today it bent because she did. Keene remains on her ridge a moment longer, eyes sweeping the landscape. The snow glows faintly orange where firelight meets frost. Spent shells glitter like fallen stars in the dirt beside her. Then, gradually, the sound returns. Not gunfire, just the world waking back up. The crackle of cooling metal, the distant hum of wind through empty casings, the soft creak of snow settling under heat. The Marines below begin to move east, silent shapes cutting through haze. Keene watches them go, her silhouette still framed against the rising smoke. For the first time since dawn, her breathing slows to match the rhythm of the mountain itself. The ridge that once echoed with chaos now absorbs it, leaving only stillness. She slides the compass back into her vest and rises. Her rifle rests across her chest, barrel down. The cold wind moves through the valley again, whispering through the silence like something grateful. Behind her, the western slope continues to burn, a graveyard of plans undone by pride. Ahead, the east route opens, carved by instinct and conviction. As the survivors disappear into distance, the mountain holds its quiet vigil. Smoke thins into light. Snow drifts over scars. For now, the sound of war is gone, swallowed whole by wind and stone. The world resumes in fragments of fluorescent light and mechanical hum. The forward operating base smells of diesel and antiseptic, a sterile quiet replacing the roar of battle. The air is dry, metallic, heavy with the faint hiss of generators. Fluorescent tubes buzz above aluminum tables where Marines sit in silence, their faces drained of expression. Somewhere, a distant radio murmurs logistics codes over static. The war outside still hums, but here, time has slowed into routine, clipped movements, muted conversations. the small sounds of survival continuing. Staff Sergeant Riley Keene sits on a steel cot near the far wall, boots dusted gray, uniform stiff from smoke and frost. Her rifle rests against the frame beside her, bolt open, cleaned halfway before her focus wandered. The room's overhead light casts her shadow long across the floor, thin, unmoving. Her hands are steady now, though her breathing carries the rhythm of exhaustion. She stares at the compass in her palm. The brass is cracked, the glass fractured from shock, but the needle turns as if nothing happened. It trembles, hesitates, then finds north again. That steadiness feels almost cruel in the fluorescent stillness. Across the room, Sergeant Mason Vance adjusts a bandage on his shoulder. The wound is shallow, stitched clean. He smiles once, the kind of smile that doesn't reach his eyes, relief diluted by memory. His laugh, quiet and brief, breaks the silence like a fault line, and for a moment, the others breathe again. Someone claps him on the back, a gesture both congratulatory and consoling. Then it fades. The generator hum takes over. Captain Logan Brooks stands near the map table. The lines drawn in grease pencil mark routes that no longer exist. His posture is rigid, but not from command anymore, from weight. The weight of numbers, of names not written down yet, but already carried. His radio handset dangles at his side, cord coiled like a tether. He doesn't speak. He hasn't since the debrief ended. The fluorescent light flickers once, briefly dimming the room. The momentary darkness feels truer than the light that replaces it. Outside, the airfield hums with movement. Helicopters lift off one by one, carrying the wounded toward the main base. Their rotors send grit swirling through the night air, a fine dust that settles on everything like memory. Marines move along the tarmac, silent silhouettes against floodlights. No one raises their voice. Even victory here sounds like mourning. Keene stands, the compass still in her hand. She crosses the room, every step deliberate. The faint scrape of her boots is the only sound. Brooks notices her before she reaches him, straightening reflexively. For a moment, neither moves. The air between them holds what words can't reach, the acknowledgement of everything lost, and of what might have been lost if not for her. As he disappears into the light, Keene sits back on the cot, resting the compass flat on her knee. The tent around her hums faintly with the pulse of generators and wind. The light flickers again, just once, before settling steady. The brass face gleams faintly. The needle trembles, then steadies. North, unwavering. In that stillness, the war feels far away, but its echo lingers inside the quiet. Not a sound, but a vibration in the bones. The cost of survival has no ceremony, only breath, silence, and direction. The compass catches the sterile light once more, scarred but aligned, steady against the hum of machines, pointing toward whatever reckoning waits beyond the ridge. What would you have done? With the smoke still hanging and the valley holding its breath, would you have trusted instinct over command, silence over noise? Out there, choice wasn't theory. It was distance, angle, breath control. And sometimes survival came down to who could stay still the longest. That's the part they never show. The quiet after the firing stops. When you realize endurance isn't strength, it's restraint. If this story hit you somewhere between memory and muscle, tell me. Drop a comment. I read them all. Subscribe if you understand what it means to hold the line, even when it breaks under you. Share it with someone who's learned that control is the last weapon left when everything else runs dry. The ridge is quiet now. The smoke's cleared. But the compass still points forward, and the next mission's already waiting in the silence.